Welcome to today's audio lecture. This audio lecture will focus on peer review. First, we'll discuss peer review in theory, and then we'll talk about peer review in practice. First, let's tackle peer review in theory, by which I mean the general purpose of peer review, what you should take out of the act and the process. This analogy might at first seem strange, but I like to think of peer review like gift giving. What I mean by that is that the joy and the value of peer review is in the giving rather than the receiving. Ideally, you will get good feedback from your classmates, but no matter what quality feedback you receive, the process of peer review gives you a chance to hone your editing skills. Ideally, peer review provides you with a model for how you should look at your own work. You should strive to look at your own writing as if someone else wrote it, and peer review helps you cultivate that sense of detachment from your own words and your own writing. And that, in short, is why I think peer review is valuable. I hope that you get good quality feedback from your classmates, but I know that the process of editing other people's work will enhance your editing skills and help you cultivate that necessary detachment from your own writing. So now let's turn to peer review in practice and go through the step-by-step process of how you'll be conducting peer review in this class. The first topic I want to discuss is the tone that you should adopt when reviewing your classmates' work. When you're reviewing that work, you should maintain a critical but clinical tone. As much as possible, you should focus on the negatives, on the areas where your classmate can improve, but while pointing out those shortcomings, those areas for improvement, you should never be mean or sarcastic. That's what I mean by clinical. I want you to take a critical detachment to reviewing your classmates' work. At very least, I want you to leave 3 comments on your classmates' draft. Ideally, you should be leaving a lot more than 3 comments, but to get full credit for your peer review, you need to leave at least 3. These comments, as I noted earlier, should focus on the negatives, on the areas where your classmate can improve. But if you can't find 3 things to criticize in your classmate's draft, then identify what it is that you liked about the draft. What made it good, in your opinion? With that tone in mind, let's now turn to the 6 steps that you should follow as you actually conduct the peer review of your classmate's work. To get started on the peer review process, navigate to the Canvas page for the assignment that you're peer reviewing. In other words, go to the page on Canvas where you uploaded your rough draft in the first place. Once you've navigated to the page where you originally uploaded your rough draft for this assignment, look to the right-hand side of the page and you should see one of your classmates' names. Go ahead and click on that classmate's name. This is what your page should look like. Go ahead and click that link right above the orange arrow on the right-hand side of the screen. Once you've clicked your classmate's name, a new page should load. There will be a large white section in the middle of the screen. Go ahead and click the View Feedback hyperlink in the upper right-hand corner of that central white section. This again is what your screen should look like. Go ahead and click that View Feedback link above the orange arrow. Once you click that View Feedback link, you should see a gray editing box that appears on your screen. To maximize that, to make it more usable, click the diagonal arrow. Above the orange arrow on the screen, you should see that diagonal arrow that I'm talking about. Again, by clicking that, that will maximize the editing box and make it more usable for peer review. This is what your maximized editing box should look like. Once you arrive at that maximized editing box, you're ready to leave comments on your classmates' assignment. Again, make sure that you're leaving at least 3 inline comments in this editing box. Canvas allows you to leave markup on your classmates' draft in a number of different ways, but I want to focus on 3 techniques that I find particularly useful. The first technique is what I call the pin tool, and you're going to use this to identify and annotate highly localized errors on your classmates' draft. You can navigate to the pin tool by clicking that pin icon in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. That's the icon that looks like a hot air balloon or an upside-down raindrop, and you can see it above the orange arrow on the slide. Once again, you're going to use this tool to identify highly localized errors, so things like missing punctuation or other kinds of errors that are limited to a very small area of your classmates' draft. For an example, I've dropped a random pin on the sample paper that you can see on the slide deck, and on the right-hand side of the screen you can see a comment that I have left that is associated with that pin. This is how you're going to be leaving those inline comments on your classmates' draft. The second tool that I would encourage you to use is the highlighter tool, which is particularly useful for identifying and annotating errors in sentences or phrases. In other words, you're going to be using this to identify and annotate errors that are slightly larger than what you'd use the pin tool to identify and annotate. To navigate to the highlighter tool, not surprisingly, you're going to click that highlighter icon in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. And then you're going to use your cursor to select an offending passage in your classmate's document. And then, as with the pin tool, you're going to leave a little comment in the right-hand margin that describes the error or issue in question. The last tool that I would encourage you to use is the box tool, which you're going to use to identify and annotate errors in paragraphs or sections. As with the previous 2 tools, you can navigate to this tool by clicking the box icon in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. You're then going to draw a box around the offending portion of your classmate's draft, and as with the previous 2 tools, you're going to leave a comment in the right-hand margin that describes the issue at hand. Now, when you leave comments on your classmate's draft, I want you to follow a particular format for your annotations. Firstly, I want you to begin your comment by linking that comment to one of the 4 categories of the standard rubric for this class. Those 4 categories, as you may recall, are content, formatting and organization, style and diction, and grammar and professionalism. Once you've linked your annotation or comment to one of those 4 standard rubric categories, I'd then like you to provide a more detailed description of each error that you're pointing out or highlighting. In general, I want your comments to look like the example on the screen. I want them to begin with a little code or abbreviation, for instance, CONT for content or F&O for formatting and organization, followed by a colon, followed by a descriptive phrase that provides more detail and information about the kind of error that you've spotted on your classmate's draft. If you need a rundown of common grammar, style, content, and formatting errors, as well as the rubric categories with which they're associated, please feel free to consult the peer review checklist. You can find this document on Canvas under the Important Resources tab. It's a great resource. Be sure and check it out. Okay, now we're getting close to the end of the peer review process. Once you've read your classmate's draft, once you've left at least 3 annotations or comments on that draft using the editing tools that we discussed previously, once you've gone back and reread those annotations, you've made sure that you connected each comment to one of the standard rubric categories and then provided a brief elaboration or explanation on that comment. Once you've done all that, you're nearly done. You can then quit out of the editing box by hitting the escape button, and the only thing that you need to do now is leave an overall comment on your classmate's draft and click save. This is what your screen should look like as you leave that overall comment. Please take note that those inline comments that you made using the pin tool, the highlighter tool, and the box tool, all of those comments and annotations save automatically. You don't have to do anything special for those to save, but you do need to click the save button on your overall comment in order for Canvas to register your peer review as complete. This overall comment, to be clear, doesn't need to be long. It doesn't need to be substantive either. But again, Canvas will not mark your review as complete until you leave this overall comment on your classmate's draft. And that's how you do it. The only thing remaining to do now is to go back and repeat steps 1 for 5 for any other drafts that you've been assigned to peer review. It's that simple. Finally, let's close out this lecture by doing a brief recap. Remember that peer review is like gift giving. The joy and the value is in the giving of feedback and criticism rather than in the feedback that you get from your classmates. Remember too that when peer reviewing your classmates' work, you should seek to maintain a critical but clinical tone. You should focus on areas where your classmate can improve, but you should never be mean or sarcastic. And lastly, please recall that for each draft you review, you must leave at least 3 inline comments. Thanks for listening.